The standard seam is the basis of all construction. It begins with placing your fabric right sides together. Your pins can actually be stitched over with most sewing machines because the presser foot is hinged and able to move. And so you would want to put your pins perpendicular to the stitching line so that your fabric does not slip while you are stitching. When you go to the sewing machine, your machine manual will have a diagram of your machine, and that is on page 2. If you look at number 2, you will see that that is the slide plate. And the slide plate has a variety of numbers on it. The standard seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. It is always 5/8 of an inch unless otherwise stated in your pattern instructions. You will see a 5/8 of an inch line there on your slide plate. The other way that is a simple thing for you to do is to take your seam gauge, set it on 5/8 of an inch, and you can then put the little marker right against the edge, and you can actually put a line either in pencil or in the fabric pen that has disappearing ink. When we begin to stitch a seam, one of the things that is very important is that we lock the stitch in. We want it to stay in, but we don't want it so secure that if we need to take something out, we rip the fabric doing that. When you position your needle, you're going to put it down approximately 1/2 inch. This is not a critical measurement, but approximately 1/2 inch, and you are going to push the little backward button and you're going to reverse stitch first. So you're going to start 1/2 inch down, reverse stitch, stop. There is a button on your sewing machine, and you'll want to become familiar with that. All of those pieces on the sewing machine. There is a button that will allow you to push it, that if you want your needle to stay in your fabric when it stops stitching, push it once, and when the machine stops stitching, it will stay down. That's very helpful so that you don't lose your place when you start to stitch again. Stitch to the end, reverse, and then stitch 5/8 of an inch all the way to the other edge. When you reach the other edge, again reverse stitch 1/2 inch. Remove your pins, and you will have stitched your first seam. Accuracy in stitching is very important. If your seam is crooked and it either exceeds or is less than 5/8 of an inch, in a garment, it is not going to fit you well. And so you want to be accurate in your stitching. This is one of those things that almost is not really an acceptable part. And so we want to stitch slowly. When you're first learning to stitch your seams, you want to practice so that you get the rhythm of putting your foot on the foot pedal and stitching slowly and smoothly. We are not going to a fire. We are not on a racetrack. Accuracy is more important than speed. Unless your pattern instructions tell you differently, the seam is then always pressed open. There are some construction techniques that we leave the seam closed. But for the standard seam or the basic seam, we then take your seam to the ironing board, It's helpful to have a little bit of steam in your iron. You open up the seam and press it on the wrong side first, and then once it has been pressed on the wrong side, you want to go to the right side, and as you press that, you're going to want to give it just a little bit of tension so that you're not getting a crease. Our rule of thumb with stitching any seam is that we never cross that seam with another seam construction or a row of stitching until the seam is pressed open. Because once you stitch over it, it's very difficult to get inside to the seam and get it smooth. When you look at your finished product then, it should be flat on the back side, it should be flat on the front side. The standard seam is your first seam, and it is the foundation for a number of the other seam finishes that we're going to do.